So let me ask you a question. Have you ever had the experience where you've just completed maybe a meditation retreat or a class or a weekend, workshop, spiritual workshop, and you just like are so high, you've had an epiphany, you realize who you truly are and your oneness with others, and you have an experience of your spiritual self. And so you make a commitment that from this moment on, I am going to live from that highest awareness. Huh? And then the very next day, maybe a family member or a friend or a boss criticizes you for something or other. And the first thing that comes out is anger or sarcasm or some kind of vitriol. And you just go, oh, what happened to that commitment? Anybody? Actually, it happens to all of us. And then we judge ourselves for it. We beat ourselves up about it, or we make another commitment. I will never, ever do that again. And then we do. So Charles Fillmore had a word for this. He called it chemicalization. And he said this, he wrote this about chemicalization. It is a condition in the mind that is brought about by the conflict that takes place when a high spiritual realization contacts an old error state of consciousness. Whenever a new spiritual idea is introduced into the mind, some negative belief is disturbed and it resists. It resists. I mean, wouldn't it be great if when we have that realization, you decide from now on, I'm going to be peaceful and loving and spirit-led. And I'm going to remember from this moment on that my source is within me and it is infinite. Unfortunately, it's that error state of consciousness, as Fillmore said, or really he's talking about old beliefs, old patterns, old shadows that seem to resist our efforts to grow. So we are continuing our exploration today of this multidimensional beingness of us, our multidimensional self. And part of that is our subconscious self. And we're going to look at how it influences us and how it can sometimes resist our efforts to reveal and express that masterpiece, right? That magnificent masterpiece that we talked about in week 1 that we are. So this is what I have kind of concluded about what is happening with this chemicalization thing. So with our spiritual practices, as higher consciousness is being realized within us, awakened within us, we are all of those places that have been hiding out in the shadows are now exposed to the light. All of those places in us, the fear, the small-mindedness, the egocentric, controlling, whatever it is that we've been trying hard to kind of really push away as far as possible, because that's not spiritual, is now exposed. It is now brought up and it is fighting for its life. These are the shadow parts of us that, will continue to, sabotage our efforts until we recognize them for what they truly are. Parts of ourselves we have disowned. Parts of ourselves we have disowned. And they'll continue to show up, sometimes loudly, as if to say, hey, here I am, deal with me. Kind of like a child would if you were to reject her or ignore her or, disown her. So we're talking about the shadow self that Carl Jung talked about, those parts of us we've repressed and hidden away in the shadows because, from the time we're young, our parents or teachers or priests or whatever authority figure, scolded us when we behaved selfishly or stupidly or we were greedy or petulant or difficult in some way, right? And sometimes in some families, some parents highly discourage male children from showing any of their sensitivity or vulnerability, or when they're behaving childishly, or, it's seen as being weak, right? That we don't show me any weakness. And female children very often, I know this, are discouraged from being bossy, bitchy, selfish, domineering, right? And so because we have this need to be loved and accepted. This is our basic human need, love and acceptance, right? We do our best to repress those parts of us. Okay? And and here's the thing, if parental disapproval didn't send these aspects of ourselves into the shadows, certainly stepping onto a spiritual path will. When we become self-aware, we realize there's parts that, are just no longer acceptable. And we certainly don't want others to see, particularly if our idea of being spiritual is to, at all times, be loving and peaceful and compassionate and selfless and giving and relaxed, yet focused and disciplined. Then we will try to repress anything that doesn't look like that. But as I mentioned before, these places don't stay quiet. They don't stay quiet. They can pop up at any moment, sometimes in a really inopportune moment, and sometimes loudly, right? And it happens whenever we get triggered, right? Or we feel threatened. These things, they pop up. I mean, if you ever thought to yourself, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Then you know what I mean. You with me so far? All right, so